CEO of Sira Naturals, and I'd just like to start off by thanking the Milford community for saying, listen, I really genuinely believe that we're making history together here with cannabis policy. I think some folks see that very clearly, other folks don't see it as clearly. Some folks are in favor of it, some folks are opposed to it. I can only tell you my position, which is that when we look back on this in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, that folks are going to look at the town of Milford and say, hey, you know what, Milford was a forward-thinking community. In fact, Milford, as you know, was the first community in Massachusetts to zone for medical marijuana. Milford was the very first community in Massachusetts to zone for medical marijuana. And as some of you may know, Milford was also the home to the very first organization to receive a recreational or adult use cannabis cultivation license in our organization. And I think that when we look back, that's going to be something that we can be proud of, not ashamed of. I'm here today to talk about our proposal to build an additional cultivation facility very close to the 13 Commercial Way facility that we currently operate. It is at a new address called 1 Industrial Road. It's at the corner of Industrial Road and Birch Street. And I'd like to very quickly run through a slideshow to talk a little bit about that project and then to answer any questions that you might have about that project. So I'll begin very quickly, and I'll go through this relatively quickly because I've done this presentation a number of times before for our 13 Commercial Way project. The only piece that's significantly different is to talk about the specifics of the greenhouse project. So I'll start with the types of licenses that we'd like to apply for, adult use cannabis licenses that we'll be applying for under this new facility. Talk a little bit about the greenhouse project, and then talk about the security measures we employ at the facility, prevention of diversion of product to minors, or really to anyone who's not authorized to have it, the positive community impact we hope to have, and that the facility will not constitute a nuisance, another statutory requirement that we will talk about tonight. So the license and the facility that I'm talking about tonight involves 1 Industrial Road, as I said, at the corner of Industrial Road and Birch Street. Take a quick bird's eye view. This is Birch Street, and here is Industrial Road. Our current cultivation facility is right here. Let's point this out, but easier to see if I point to it with my finger. Right here at the end of Commercial Way. The new facility we're talking about, this parcel right here, right at the corner. And so this is a little bit of an old photo. It shows a wooded area here. These woods have been stripped, and it's currently being developed as we speak, although we haven't even begun to build the project that we're talking about tonight. So we're applying for 3 licenses at this facility. What's called an adult use marijuana cultivator, an adult use marijuana product manufacturer, and an existing licensee marijuana transporter. The first type, marijuana cultivator, is relatively self-explanatory. For this project, the adult use marijuana product manufacturer is a license that covers the harvesting and the packaging, essentially, of the cannabis flower that we'll be producing at the facility. And the existing licensee marijuana transporter is a license that allows us to transport products to and from that facility as well. The project itself is composed of these 4 elements. It's what we call a modified light deprivation greenhouse, 15,000 square feet approximately, 15,200. It will be for cannabis cultivation and manufacturing, and it is a high security facility. What do I mean by modified light deprivation greenhouse? That's a term that's not commonly known. Essentially what it means is, in the northern climate, in the wintertime, as we all know, our days get much shorter and our nights get much longer. In the summertime, we have longer days and shorter nights. What that requires in cannabis cultivation is for us to have equipment inside a greenhouse that can essentially simulate day or night environmental parameters. And so we have to provide these plants with 12 hours of light and 12 hours of darkness every single day. And so in the deep winter, we don't have 12 hours of light, so we use supplemental lighting, and we use a screen to black out the light at the beginning and end of the day in the summer, when the days are much longer than 12 hours. The sides of the greenhouse will be opaque, so we shouldn't have any light spillage out the sides of the greenhouse, for example, on those winter nights when the lights are on. A couple of quick mock-ups. This is the site today as it's being cleared. And this is what the proposed greenhouse structure would look like on that site. And we have essentially 6 bays here, which are the greenhouse. Again, opaque walls, transparent ceilings. And then this 7th bay, which will have an opaque ceiling as well, and this is where we do all of the harvesting, drying, curing, and packaging. So it's inside this secure area. Now, all of this building, of course, will be secured. So we'll have access controls on the doors, obviously locks on the doors, commercial grade locks on the doors, and the entire perimeter of the facility will be fenced. We also will be employing, and I'll get to this, a number of security apparatus to prevent intrusion, just as we do in our 13 Commercial Way facility. This is a site plan. So again, this is Industrial Road right here. Birch Street would be up here. Folks would turn off of Birch onto Industrial Road. There'd be a driveway here. We have parking laid out here. This is the greenhouse structure itself. Again, from here over would be the greenhouse bays, and this would be what we call the head house, the spot for packaging and for production. The activities that will be happening: cannabis propagation, which is basically planting a seed and growing it to about 6 inches tall; cannabis cultivation, growing the plant from 6 inches to its full 3 or 4 feet tall; and then harvest and drying and curing, which is essentially just hanging it to dry in layman's terms. Greenhouse would look something like this. I couldn't find an accurate a photo rendition of the exact style of greenhouse that we're going to be building, but it's essentially something like this. And what you see here are actually air intake fans. So the air gets pushed inside and then filtered on the far end when it comes out. And this is roughly approximating what it might look like on the inside of one of those bays. Simply a greenhouse bay full of cannabis plants. And you can see here infrastructure. These beams going across are infrastructure for the light deprivation curtains. So this is where the light, sort of a curtain would just come across this at night to block the sun. And you can see we'll also be having supplemental lighting in the greenhouse as well at the beginning and end of short winter days. This is what a cannabis flower looks like close up. I've talked about this at a number of presentations before, but just to refresh everyone's memory, what are we doing in these facilities? We're essentially growing plants, and if you look very closely at the surface of the leaves of the plants, they have these small structures called trichomes. This is where all of the medical compounds are formed in the plant, and this is essentially what we're manufacturing here at these facilities. And we take a very a sort of clean room, professional approach. We're looking very carefully at efficiency, at process efficiency, at security efficiency, that type of thing. And so when we look at plant production, we're not just looking at growing plants, we're really looking at maximizing the production of these trichomes. This is a photograph taken inside our 13 Commercial Way facility of mature cannabis plants just before harvest. And these benches in this photograph are actually about 2 feet off the floor. And so this is me here, I'm about 5'8". So we're looking at plants that are about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. So security measures at the facility are required by the Cannabis Control Commission, our regulator, and they include a number of components. 3 of the major components are 24/7 video surveillance, both inside and outside the perimeter of the building. Zone access control, so every door in the facility will have its own separate computerized door access. That not only prevents unauthorized folks from going in or going out, but it also tracks who goes in and who goes out. So even authorized folks get their ID scanned and tracked, so we know who's in the facility when they came in and when they left. And we will also have human beings, boots on the ground security for all operational hours. We're required by regulation to have 2 security systems, completely separate companies, backup and redundant. Each one of them monitors the facilities 24 hours a day separately. So we use a company called NetWatch USA for the cameras, motion detectors, access control. They monitor all of these from a remote site. And then we use Wayne Alarm Systems and they do the perimeter alarms, glass breaks, door sensors, and they monitor those 24/7 as well. If we've ever had, and we've had several false alarms at the Milford facility, someone drops something or a glass breaks on the inside, for example, we'll get a call often from both of these separate security companies saying, hey, something's going on, check it out. We're also required to track every single plant that we create. And so just like in the Milford facility, we will put a barcode on every seed that we plant. You see barcodes here on these little seedlings. And this barcode is a unique identifier for the plant. It allows us to track the life cycle of the plant all the way through until its harvest and then final packaging into a product. We have a very robust tracking system that we've developed for the medical program that we have, and we would employ the same type of robust tracking for this facility as well. So in terms of prevention of diversion to minors, again, this is a section of the program that is required by the regulations that I talk about. I like to expand it really to saying prevention of diversion to anyone for whom cannabis is unauthorized. And that would really include anyone that's not any of our employees. So this is an employee-only facility. On rare occasions, we have made exceptions to bring guests to the facility, but we have a very strict protocol for that. They have to check in, show ID, and be escorted at all times by an employee. Our prevention of diversion protocol essentially embodies these four elements: the security elements that I just mentioned, the cameras, the access controls, and the live human being boots on the ground security, as well as the training of all of our employees. All of our employees are rigorously trained on compliance. No one is going to let their friend in the door or anything like that. Education, we use consumer education programs, and this really applies more to the retail side. We educate our customers on our security protocols. We also tell them about who's allowed to have cannabis and who's not allowed to have cannabis. That's a big part of our, certainly on the medical side, part of our education program. And then systems to prevent unauthorized access. Again, the door access control systems and the careful monitoring of everything we do. And by the way, all of the videos that we use, all the video surveillance is kept for a period of 90 days, which in the security sort of industry is an exceptionally long period of time. It requires an enormous amount of storage, but if we discover something 45 or 60 days after the fact, we'll still have that footage to go back and check on. Positive community impact, and this is something that we feel very strongly about here in Milford. We've been in Milford now since 2013. We like to think we've developed enduring relationships with members of the community. Some of the recent contributions that we've made have been to the Milford Regional Medical Center, the Youth Center, the Medal of Liberty ceremony, sponsored by some friends right here in the room. And we also have a community host agreement with the town of Milford, through which we donate $250,000 annually. We have a hiring preference for Milford residents, so all things being equal, if we have someone who's applying for a job at any of our facilities from Milford, they get the job before someone from somewhere else. We'll also be attending the Milford Regional Medical Center Melange Gala this year as well, and we've contributed to that. We intend to contribute on a sort of ad hoc basis this charitable giving program that we've established here in Milford. The Milford Area Chamber of Commerce. We have one of our employees sitting here tonight. Ashland Plunkett is a member of the board of directors of the MAC, and also we like to think of ourselves as a zero impact facility. We don't create any waste stream, and the waste stream that we do create, which is very, very small, we actually we put into totes and truck away from the facility. So we have zero waste that goes down into the sewer system in the town of Milford. Another legal requirement of this presentation is that I say why and how our facility will not constitute a nuisance. And of course, a nuisance is a technical legal term. We also use the term informally, but legally, the term nuisance means the unreasonable, unwarranted, or unlawful use of one's property in a manner that substantially interferes with the use or enjoyment of another property. And so basically what this means is don't bother your neighbors. And we're very gratified that we believe that we've got a very good relationship. We haven't heard any complaints from neighbors since we've been operating at the 13 Commercial Way facility. Of course, that's the same policy we hope to employ in the new facility. And so typically nuisance falls into one of the first four categories here: noise, light, obstruction, or odor. The facility that we propose, very similar to the 13 Commercial Way facility, is essentially silent. It makes no noise at all. Light pollution is going to be mitigated by opaque walls, and also any of the exterior lighting will conform to code, be pointed directly at the ground. We're also in an industrial park. There are no residences abutting this facility. So typically speaking, that's where you find problems with light pollution, when you're right up next to a residence. We have no obstructions, and odor control is something that is a common question in our industry. The plants that we produce they do generate an odor, and so we put quite a bit of time and money into odor control in the facilities. We will do this at the greenhouse just like we do at our 13 Commercial Way facility. Now you might think, okay, the greenhouses that I know growing up, they're sort of open to the outside. They've got big windows, or they have louvers that open to the air. That's not the case with this facility. We will have exposure to outside air, but there will be filtration between the inside air and the outside air, and that serves a number of purposes. One of them is we don't want to get any contaminants into the facility, so we filter the air coming in, and then of course we don't want odor going out, so we filter the air going out as well. The golden rule, of course, be a good neighbor. And that's really the beginning and the end of the presentation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions from anyone in the audience.
I just have three.
Yes. Just three. Okay.
They may lead to more.
All right.
What does your finished product look like?
What does the finished product look like? Let me see if I can, in one of the other presentations that I gave, I had a slide that showed the finished product. Let me see if I can find that. So this is a slide that shows a number of products that we make at the 13 Commercial Way facility. The greenhouse facility, however, is going to be limited to, very likely limited to one or two of these products. So a cannabis flower, dried cannabis flower, looks just like this. So essentially we sell containers of these flowers in increments of 1 gram up to 1 ounce, an eighth of an ounce, a quarter of an ounce, a half an ounce, and an ounce. So it all looks like this. We also sometimes take these flowers and we do what's called an extraction process, where we extract the chemical compounds out of the plant. We leave the flower leaves behind, we leave the plant material behind, and we're able to infuse that oil that we generate into a number of other products. So we have liquid products, we infuse a honey, we have patches, edible products like caramel chews that you can eat to get the medicated effect. Interestingly, on the adult use side of the business, as opposed to the medical side of the business, the dosage for each unit of infused product is much, much lower than on the medical side. So the rule for us is 5 milligrams of THC per unit, and that would be, or per serving, which would be one of these little chews. 5 milligrams is a relatively low dose by any standard. So for folks who are really interested in getting much more of a medicated effect, they'd have to take a number of different, 2 or 3 of these probably, in order to feel any effect. So Cannabis Control Commission decided to err on the side of caution and make that number low to start.
So you're not producing a product that's physically attractive to the youth, like cookie or brownie.
No, we're not. There are requirements in the Cannabis Control Commission regulations on the adult use side, as well as the Department of Public Health regulations on the medical side, that prohibit packaging that's appealing to minors. So we can't mimic commonly known candies. We can't use flashy graphics, can't depict children on the packages. And of course, all of this stuff is 21 plus. So you can't even come into the facility unless you're 21 years old. Unlike a liquor store where you could bring, theoretically you could bring your kids into the liquor store, you won't be able to come into a recreational cannabis dispensary with anyone under 21 years old.
The second question is security.
Mm-hmm.
Internal surveillance of the employees is going on as well.
That's correct. So the entire facility is being surveilled 24 hours a day, including during work hours. Again, those recordings are kept for a period of 90 days. If we discover any allegations of malfeasance, we can go right back to the cameras and check it out. Was that your third or your second?
My third question is, how do you handle the physical distribution of your product? Does an outside company who's licensed to do whatever they do with it come into the town to a loading dock in a truck, and you hand it to them, and then they take that truck and move it out of Milford? They must leave Milford.
That's correct. So Milford has banned all, as you know, Milford has banned all recreational retail sales of cannabis. And so none of the cannabis that we produce at our facilities, at any of the facilities, whether it be 13 Commercial Way or this one at 1 Industrial Road, would be available for sale in the town of Milford. But no, we do not contract with a third party. One of the license types that you may have noticed that I put up on the screen first was this third-party transporter license, or existing licensee transporter license. So we will have trucks that we own as an organization. Our trucks will come to our loading docks and carry these products away. That's correct. Yes. Yeah. How thorough is the vetting process of our employees? I can tell you that the process is very thorough. It's a process that's mandated by the state, and so we go through an extensive. All of our employees go through an extensive background screening check, and it's really it's a very comprehensive check. So there is a third-party background screening company that we contract with, registered with the state, approved by the Cannabis Control Commission as a background screening company. So the state has actually vetted the screening process that our third party uses. And we have to keep those records on file as long as the employee is with us, and then for a period of time after the employee leaves. So the background screening company will give us a report back. It includes things like a Corey criminal background check, a sex offender check, a number of other checks. The employee has to list every address they've lived at for the past 10 years and every jurisdiction in which they have lived. This background screening check will go and check the court systems and essentially the equivalent Corey systems there, even if it's out of state. And then it also does a social media search. So in this day and age, a lot of folks post silly things on their social media. So we get back a complete record of everything these folks have posted on their social media if there's anything untoward. And so we make very careful screening decisions about employees and only take the best of the best. And in terms of age, what kind of an age limit do you have? In terms of age, the question is, I'm just going to repeat the questions for those who are listening at home. I'm going to get out from behind this pole here. In terms of age, certainly no one under 21 is ever allowed even in the facility, let alone be employed by the facility. And we have approximately 65 folks that we employ at the 13 Commercial Way facility. And there's a wide age range. I think probably, I don't know for sure, but the youngest folks we have are in their sort of early to mid 20s. Oldest folks we have are in their 60s. And so we sort of run the gamut there. And everything takes place. It doesn't look very big to me, but that might just be my perception from here. How many people are you expecting to be working in that facility, and would that staffing pattern be this replicated, the one that you have on Commercial Way? No, it's a much smaller facility. So the total footprint of this new greenhouse facility with the greenhouse component and the head house component is only about 15,000 square feet. So we've got a 30,000 square feet, double the size at 13 Commercial Way. So this is a much smaller facility. We expect at most 20 people, probably more like 12 to 15 people would be working in this facility at any given time. And then there's also support back and forth because the facilities are very close to each other. And so we expect that we would probably be having some employees be working in both facilities on different days at different times, that type of thing. So but there would be a dedicated staff, so to speak. Absolutely. Yes, that's correct. Continuity. Yes, there would be a dedicated staff at the new 1 Industrial Road facility to give continuity. 15 and 20 people? That's correct. And how many are at 1 Commercial Way? We've got about between 65 and 70 people there now. I think at last count, that's a good question. How many people at the 13 Commercial Way are Milford people?
62. How many people are from Milford?
From Milford today? We've had a recent
I would
influx.
say 15.
Yeah, 15 or so.
But our staffing initiatives are always focused in the community first. And Kabira Mezzachelli is our HR representative there, so she spends a lot of time. She's out of a lot. It might even be closer to 20 now. If you think about it, a lot of her old students. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Mm.
She's brought a tremendous amount of
I won't
stuff.
inject any humor in what process you use to vet me. Not with what's going on now.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. So the new greenhouse facility, are you growing only adult use plants there? And do you have the license for that yet, or you're in the process, this is part of the process of getting a license?
This is part of the process for getting the adult use license for that facility.
Okay.
The question was, will we be growing only adult use product there? And the answer is yes, because we will not be licensed to cultivate medical marijuana at that facility. The licenses, medical marijuana licenses, adult use marijuana licenses, run with the property and run with the address. And so we have medical and recreational cultivation licenses for 13 Commercial Way.
Okay.
This one will only be a adult use recreational license cultivation facility.
Okay. And so the 13, the existing facility,
Mhm.
you have dual licenses for that currently?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What else did I want to ask? Oh, the water. Is Milford Water Company supplying the water for the plants?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mhm.
And there's no issue with the volume that's required?
No, we've been in constant contact with the water company. We've told them the volumes that we need, and we have. They're in the full loop of developing. They had an opportunity to put in their opinion in our site plan review process, and we found no problem.
Do you do
Okay.
additional filtering of that water?
We do. We do additional filtering of the water. Yes.
Okay.
Every time you use the term adult
Adult use. Yes.
use,
Mm.
you're really referring to recreation.
That's correct. Adult use and recreational marijuana are synonymous. We use those two terms interchangeably.
Recreational sticks with me a little bit.
Yeah. we like the term adult use.
Adult use recreational marijuana.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to use solar power to generate electricity for either facility?
So there is a provision in the state statute that allows us to get some benefit if we use renewable energy sources, and we're looking very closely at renewable energy sources. Today, we don't have plans to put up any solar panels on this particular facility. I mean, in a sense, we're using the ultimate solar panel. A greenhouse is sort of the ultimate solar panel. We're using direct sunlight right in onto the plants themselves. If the opportunity were to present itself where we could take advantage of solar power, we certainly would. We've been looking at that very closely.
You consider the word retail synonymous with wholesale?
Is the word retail synonymous with wholesale? Absolutely not. No. Retail is retail. Wholesale is wholesale.
You're not doing any wholesale?
Well, no, we don't know that. So the question is, are we doing any wholesale? We may be doing wholesale sales of recreational and medical cannabis, depending on what the marketplace shapes out like. So you may remember on the medical side, companies and licensees are required to be what's called fully vertically integrated, which means we have to have a cultivation facility and a manufacturing facility and a retail facility that is supplied by our own production. On the adult use side, that is no longer the case. So the Cannabis Control Commission is giving out retail-only licenses, production-only licenses, cultivation-only licenses, and so the anticipation is, or the prediction is, that there will be a wholesale market in adult use cannabis that will eventually develop. Should such a marketplace develop, it is possible that we would be selling into the wholesale marketplace. We don't know yet.
Your current facilities that you own now, Needham and Cambridge and
Somerville.
Somerville, are they also, is that something that they're medical?
That's correct.
They're all medical.
Mhm.
Is there like a plan in the future to make those medical and adult use?
We're looking very carefully at that now. None of the communities that we operate in have zoned for adult use retail. Cambridge and Somerville are in the process of looking at adult use retail zoning, but they haven't made a decision yet. When those municipalities make their decisions, we'll then take a look at that.
Right now says no, correct?
Needham, the town of Needham has banned adult use recreational sales. That's correct. Fire away.
Back to future, if there's something that we're looking to do, and we would like to request a grant, how would we do that?
We don't have a specific application process, but if you'd like, you can get in touch with Ashlyn or in touch with Kabiria, and we can certainly work on a one-to-one basis.
I'm a little confused about retail wholesale.
Okay?
Down the road, what would your vision be of a wholesale license involved? It wouldn't include wholesaling within the parameters of Milford, would it?
It wouldn't. So no. It would not. Any wholesale sales would not be sold to any marijuana establishments within the boundaries of the town of Milford, because Milford has outlawed any retail marijuana. So the wholesale sales that I'm talking about would be folks that get a adult use marijuana retail license somewhere in the Commonwealth. It's not allowed in Milford, so that wouldn't happen here. And then they contact us and say, do you have any wholesale cannabis to supply us for our retail operations somewhere else? So that's possible. In the community, another dispensary, perhaps in the community of Cambridge where we operate, calls us and says, hey, do you have any wholesale cannabis? We may entertain those types of orders. Look, I think that we all
I'm a little concerned with some clever attorney coming up with a way around the word retail.
It's an oxymoron.
What clever?
a clever attorney.
Milford bans retail. So no matter how you want to carve up the distribution by Sira to a third party, it cannot be retail sold in the town.
Yes. So for your purposes, retail and wholesale is
It's
the
the
same.
same.
Yeah.
Correct.
The wholesaling is selling to a third party or a second party who is retailing somewhere.
I'm
And
not
since
really
you cannot
concerned
retail in Milford, you can't sell to anybody else in Milford.
I guess what I'm driving at is I'm not concerned about the people in the room. I'm concerned about someone coming in, a competitor in this industry, who terms his business as not a retail business, but a wholesale retail business.
Well, I can tell you.
Tested yet, I don't think.
So the concern is that somehow the product that we make would be sold to a consumer in the town of Milford. And I can assure you that given the current licensing scheme from the Cannabis Control Commission, that could never happen. One of the key components of anyone who tries to get a license from the state to sell recreational or medical cannabis is that they must have the approval of their host community. And so without that approval from the town of Milford, which would not be forthcoming in any of those cases, they won't be able to get a state license.
You're precluded then conclusively from selling any of your product to a wholesaler within the boundaries of
That's correct. Yep.
a wholesaler only within the boundaries of Milford.
Well, we don't have any wholesaler licenses. So, well,
There's not a wholesaler license.
Yeah.
No, they don't exist as such.
let me say this: the license type from the state. In order to do anything involving cannabis, you must get a license from the Cannabis Control Commission. Today, there are only 3 types of licenses, essentially. There is a retailer, a product manufacturer, which would be making those types of infused products, and then there is a cultivator. There is no wholesaler license type, so that type of business could not be formed under state law. That's correct. And I'm happy to further, have this conversation with you if you'd like. Yeah. Any other questions at this point? Well, I thank you very much for coming. If you have any follow-up questions, you know where to find me. For sure, feel free to reach out, and we hope to see you all again soon. All right.
Thank you.
Good night.